So the TLDR version is acrylic plastic, plastic melt, plastic stick to plastic. Have you ever had a family member find something really cool on Etsy and they're like, oh, that's really awesome. Maybe you should add that to your repertoire. Could you do that? And you go and look at it and realize that it needs like some special technology like UV printing, and you have to go, yeah, no, not in my skill set. But then there's still that element of, but could I do it? So that's what we're going to play with a little later today. Shout out to my mom for coming up with this idea. She saw a really cute ornament on Etsy. I think it actually involved some like different pieces for like a baby's first Christmas. It was like a 4D shaker ornament. And I don't know for the life of me why they call them 4D shakers, where it has these cute little pieces in them and they give like little information about the baby and all that and their full color. And then it's encased in a acrylic shaker. And she thought that might be really cool to mix with this acrylic welding technique. And she is right. Unfortunately, the pieces in there are typically acrylic that's been printed with UV printing, which is a great tool if you can afford it. I personally don't have the money for a $4,000 or $5,000 printer, and that's a pretty high maintenance printer on top of it. So I'm going to do is a method that still lets me get really cool designs on acrylic, but at a fraction of the cost. And I'm going to show you how later. I had a couple people ask me exactly how the acrylic welding technique worked because they were a little confused with my video. And truth be told, I guess I didn't really explain it very well. So the TLDR version is acrylic plastic, plastic melt, plastic stick to plastic. Okay, that's the short version. Longer version here. Basically, the acrylic welding technique works because you have two pieces of acrylic with nothing in between. You'll notice no masking. I don't have any like coating on here, anything. These are two clean pieces of acrylic. I do usually clean them just to get any additional residue off, but these are two clean, dry pieces of acrylic. At least on this side, the opposite side I have masked. The two sides that are going to be up next to each other, completely clean, unmasked, nothing. And what you do is you put them together. Usually I put these in the machine. I will tape them together just to hold them in place. When I set this in the machine, I'm going to laser cut through both of these layers at the same time. And typically when you do this, you're going to want to go slow and hot, aka you're going to want to pick a speed that's a little bit slower than usual. It is a thicker material. I think for my machine, I probably run somewhere around 5 millimeters a second, but that's my machine. You'll have to test yours. And I'm probably running, honestly, 80-90% power. And I have a 55 watt CO2 laser, just FYI. You always have to play around with your settings, and those numbers for me can even depend on the day. Sometimes my machine's deciding it doesn't want to have as much juice, or I've been lazy and I haven't cleaned the lens, things like that. I'm having them cut at the same time. They're connected to each other. They're taped together, one on top of each other, and it's cutting through this material. The way a laser cutter works is it's not really a knife and cutting per se. What it's actually doing is it's firing a beam of photons. That's what a laser is. And it's essentially burning its way through the material. Acrylic doesn't so much burn as it melts. When we say cut with a laser cutter, we're technically burning through material. The heat is so intense that it's actually melting through the plastic, which leaves a little bit of residue. It liquefies a little bit. Now, when you have just one piece in the machine, that liquid kind of tends to either slide off or just kind of get absorbed back into the cut and solidify, or it's going to end up on, as some residue on your chrome coat tray. But when you have two pieces of acrylic next to each other, that melted material tends to get dripped onto the one underneath it and inside, especially because as you're cutting through material, keep in mind that the temperature on the outside where the cut is being made, because a really hot beam of, photons is going through and that's very hot, that's causing the temperature on the outside to be very hot versus in the middle where there's no laser going. It's going to be a little bit cooler. And if you remember from physics class, if pressure and temperature are inversely related. Basically what happens is because of the temperature going up in here and the temperature not being as hot in here and the volumes are staying the same. I'm not changing the volume of air on the outside versus the inside, it's going to cause a little bit of negative pressure. So that melted acrylic actually kind of gets wicked in a little bit into the space in between the two pieces of acrylic. Because you've got this liquid acrylic between two pieces of acrylic, it's going to solidify and it's going to act like a glue because like dissolves like likes to go together in chemistry. If you ever want to try to dissolve something, you need to find something that's a similar property. And the same thing kind of applies with glue. Is items that you want to glue together with, you tend to want to use a bond that is kind of the same material. This melted acrylic between these two pieces of acrylic is going to work really well as a bond, and it's all going to kind of solidify and create a seal between the two pieces of acrylic just by the property of the laser cutting, melting its way through that extra little liquid plastic, being melted around the seams, getting sucked in. And then once the piece cools, that's usually why I say when you're doing this to kind of let it rest in the machine a little bit before you pick it up. That gives that liquid time to solidify, and then you've got a really nice bond. So that is how the acrylic welding technique works. You're welding two pieces of material together. That's what the concept of welding is using heat to bond two pieces of material together by kind of melting and fusing them together. It doesn't require any special glue. It doesn't really require any unique techniques other than making sure you have two pieces of acrylic stacked next to each other and you're using the right settings in your machine. That's all you got to do. We can take advantage of it and actually stack multiple layers to kind of create effects and empty spaces in the middle to sort of create our shaker. That's how that works. So we're going to work on a project today. Now, the example my mom had shown me was a baby ornament for Christmas. Now, it's fall here. It's Halloween. I'm not in a Christmas mood yet. I know I'm going to get flooded with ornament orders here, in the next month or so. Not that I'm complaining, but, let's spook this up a little bit. Let's make a funky Halloween ornament. Okay, let's get started. So I'm going to take you guys over here onto my computer, and we are going to be working in Affinity Designer. You could do this in Adobe Illustrator. I have been trying to get off of the Adobe platform because I am tired of paying the monthly subscription, and I find that Affinity seems to do what I need it to do. So I've pulled graphic resources from Creative Fabrica where I have a subscription. It's a pretty inexpensive subscription. I think you can get the year for like $50. You have access to all sorts of fonts, different creative projects, and some decent graphics. My only complaint is I feel like there is a lot of really crappy AI art in there. I mean, I'm not going to lie, guys. If you're posting art and you've generated it through AI, I'm not going to complain, but at least go through and clear out the mistakes. I hate downloading patterns and it's like there's something missing an eye or a blob there. It's like, do a little bit of work, please. Sorry, rant over. Okay, so we're going to create a Halloween themed ornament. How are we going to do that? We're going to start setting up my ornament shape. Now, I'm not going to make this complicated. We're going to just do a simple circle. I'm going to flip my colors here for a moment so that I can see what I'm doing. Or, nope, I want that black, but I want my border to be done. Okay, so we're good. So see what I'm doing. I'm going to create a circle here, and then I'm going to go ahead and just copy paste that same circle, but I'm going to reduce that shape maybe about there. Basically what I'm doing is I'm just kind of trying to create sort of a boundary. All right, and then I'm going to go ahead and just snap this to the center, and I'll snap this one to the center. Okay, so they're both centered on my thing. That looks pretty good. What I will do is take advantage of my subtract function. There we go. So I have a nice circle. So this is going to be the shape of my ornament, if you will. And then it's going to need a little hole on the top. I'm going to do the same thing, essentially. Oh, let me drop this down real quick there. I'm going to do the same thing and make myself a little hole. And then I'm going to make another one. Drag and drop that in. That looks good. All right. Plus minus, there we go, other circle. I'm going to go ahead and align that to the center of the board, and I'm just going to bring that down enough that, there we go. All right, enough that we got a nice smooth little edge here. That works. Might even bring it up just one. There, that way I can see a complete circle. I'm going to add these two together, and I'm going to merge them so it's all one big shape. All right, so this is my holder for my ornament. I'm just going to center it. So now I'm going to make this look a little more Halloween-y. Now, sometimes you see people sort of do like a snow globe effect where like there's like a little house or maybe some snow or such. So I'm going to place a shape that I found. Let's bring this one in. All right, so I'm going to bring this in. I'm just going to drag and drop it in. Oops. There we go. What's kind of cool about working with Affinity is that it'll let you drag and drop an SVG in, and then it will like sort of open it up as a second one if you double click it. So I can actually just pick the portion that I need for this. I'm going to go ahead and copy and close this file, and I could actually paste, and I'll just get that house, and I can delete the big one. So I've got my little house here, and I'm going to want to put this in here. I think that'll be good. Go ahead, size it up a bit, the right size here. Yeah, I think that'll look kind of cute. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to flip the coloring on this, take that border off so it matches that. I want to merge it into all one shape because what that will do is that will allow my little extra icons that are going to be floating around. They're going to float around in this space, but if they hit anything in here, they won't kind of get stuck underneath it where you can't see it. So that is definitely what I want to do. So I'm going to merge. Yeah, I'm going to do one layer in black, and I think I'm going to do another layer like this, but I'm going to do it in yellow. That way you can get like a little bit of glow behind the windows, if that makes sense. So what I'll do is I will copy this design. So I'm going to copy, I'm going to paste, I'm going to hide this one that I'm working with. We're going to change this to the yellow. This is going to be the yellow acrylic. Now, the only thing I want to do is I want to get rid of these windows. So to do that, I'm just going to take my little node tool, and I'm essentially going to select all these extra points that I don't need. I'm going to delete them. Fairly easy to do. There. Perfect. So now that's what that'll look like on top. There'll be that layer of yellow on the other side, and you'll be able to see the windows in between. All right, so the only other thing I need to do is create my little guys that I'm going to put in here to float around. Now, let's add the cute little pieces that are going to go inside. I am going to place these cute little icons that I found. And I'm going to shift click and select all of them so I can bring them in. This is one of the things I like about Affinity is that when I go to place, I can see all my little icons right here. So I can drag and drop them in. So these are the little cute little icons. I keep calling them icons. I don't know what to call them. Little floating baubles. I'm just going to drag all of them in here. I don't know if I'm going to use all of them, but they're cute. They kind of look like little ornaments. Little Christmassy ornaments. I thought that was kind of a cute design. So I have all of them in here. I'm thinking I might not use the ghost just because I feel like the white edge will get lost because I'm going to be using sublimation on white acrylic. And with that, you always kind of run the risk of not seeing things. But what I could do is I could go in here and I could add an outline on the outside. I could add a tiny little outline. Nothing big, and that can creates like a little outline on it. That might be cute, and then that'll change the design up a little bit for me. What's kind of cool is you can actually put two, I believe, on here. If I set this to black and I set this out there, and then I set this one to white. Yep, cool. Yeah, so if I wanted to, say I wanted like there to be a little bit of padding between the outline and you can't actually do that by sort of doing this little extra plus by adding an additional outline. You just have to remember your layers that, you want the darker color underneath to that. So that's kind of cute. Gives me a cute little effect. I like that. And then what I can do is I can actually just group all these guys. And then I can take the special effects and I can drag it up to here onto the group. And then suddenly they all have this effect. So these are my little icons. So I have my little characters and then I've got my shapes. So let's get this set up to go to print, both sublimation and laser cutting. So I have little guys here that I need to send over to be sublimated as well as cut out. So I'm going to check real quick and see how big everything is. I've got this in document setup. I have everything set up in pixels. I am going to change this over to inches so I have a better sense of what's going on here. So I know that this ornament is going to be about 6.5 inches wide. So that's probably pretty reasonable ornament wise. That might even be a little on the big side. Let's shrink everything down. Select everything, and I've got it locked. So let's set this so that it's got a width of about 5.5. There we go. That's a little better. So everything otherwise is kind of the size that I want it to be, I think. I've got my little guys. They're all kind of sort of the same. There we go. They're all sort of roughly the same size, or what I think looks pretty reasonable. So I like all of these. They look cute. I think maybe my ghost could be a little smaller. I feel like he's a bit big. Yeah. That works. He's about the size of the werewolf, so that works there. Hat's kind of in between the bat. It's talking about the same size as everything else. Yeah. Okay. So these are my little dangle guys. So I got these all set up. So I'm going to go ahead and just put these... How am I going to do this? Oh, I know what I'll do. I'm going to create myself a new artboard. I flipped this over to an artboard. I'm going to go ahead and just create myself another one real quick. It doesn't have to be huge. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag all my little guys over onto this artboard. And what I'm doing is just really getting these ready for sublimation, as well as moving them for laser cutting. So I'm going to just make sure I've got myself enough room so that I got a little cutting space in between when I go to sublimate, but then I'm not wasting paper. Got that set up. That will be what I will export out here shortly for sublimation. And then I've got these layers over here. So these are going to be my Lightburn layers. So we're all set and ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and export Artboard 1 as an SVG. Artboard 1. There we go. Looks good. Everything looks good. I'm going to export this out. And then I've got this one here. And I'm just going to go ahead and shrink this down a little bit. So this is 2x4. So I know that. I'm going to really quickly create. There we go, 2x4, make sure there's nothing in there. That way it has a border. And I do that just so when I'm importing things into Lightburn, I know that it's coming in the same size because I know that this is 2x4. Helps me kind of keep things aligned. It sounds silly, but it saves you a headache if things aren't lining up size-wise. And then I'm going to export it as a PNG. So what I need to do is create a copy of this for Lightburn so that it can read it and trace these shapes. I'm going to create a second artboard here, and I'm just going to make sure it is the same shape as this one. And I'm just going to copy this group and I'm going to bring it over onto this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm basically creating sort of a shape that can be registered with Lightburn for traceability. And I can do this just playing with the effects. We don't necessarily need the little white outline. We just kind of need this black border here. But then what I also want to do is I want to fill this with a color overlay of black, just like that. And that is going to, by doing that, that's going to create these simple shapes that Image Trace is going to be able to see and understand when I bring it over into Lightburn. And I'm going to leave the frame just so that it knows what size to cut them at. That's easy to do. So I'm just going to export this really quickly, again, as a PNG. In the meantime, I also need to print this out for sublimation. So this was the little document that I set up for printing. So I like to just honestly open this up in preview and I go into print. And I need to make sure that this is 100% scale, looks pretty good. I always have my settings set up so that I use premium presentation, Epson Vivid, high quality mirror, and then I usually go over in my advanced settings and turn up my saturation. So that's all I do, and then I'll send it to print. Those then will get sublimated onto my little white acrylic, and it's going to create these cute little icons. So let's bring in my shapes. So I'm going to bring in my cut icon. So these are the shapes of my little icon guys that I'm going to sublimate. And I just need to basically trace them or did them in black. It's much easier to kind of understand. It sees them. It does try to optimize a little bit. It tries to smooth things a little bit. If I fade image, you can see it. So these shapes look pretty nice. So I'm good with that. So I'm going to click OK. And if I zoom in down here, you'll see I've got these shapes here. And I've got some, going to ungroup them real quick. I've got the extra lines, obviously, because I've got the image, which I don't actually need the image anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and just hide that for now. I'm going to go ahead and just delete the border because I don't need that. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this little part in here because I don't want that cut open where the little guy has. Now that cuts it right along the edge of the design. So I want these guys to have a little bit of padding. So I'm going to select all of them and I'm going to offset out a bit. I don't need it to offset off that much. I'm going to offset it by 0.03. Yeah, and I'm also going to have it delete the original objects. I'm going to save myself a little bit of time. So those are my shapes that are going to then get cut out, and those are going to get sublimated. So when you're working with a welding project, you have to think about what lines need to be welded together, aka what lines are going to kind of connect all of the acrylic together, and what lines aren't, what lines are going to be sort of separate. So for this design, I have this haunted house design, and I have a layer of black acrylic that's going to have the haunted house cut out and the windows cut out. All of this inside the circle, I don't need welded. I don't need these lines connected to the material underneath. because I need those cuts made essentially just through the black acrylic layer. That's a good way to think about it. If you only need a cut specific to one layer, that's a good sign that it's not a layer. It's not a cut that you need to weld. So these blue lines here are everything that needs to get cut out of the black material first. And then, I'm going to turn that off. Then I have this yellow layer here. This layer is the yellow or orange acrylic that I need cut. All of this inside here needs to be cut out on the yellow layer and only on the yellow layer. So that's why this cut is separate. So this will be what will be cut out of my yellow piece. And again, I'm going to start with all of them being cut in a square piece so that I can line them all up and I know that they will tape together later and be in alignment. That helps kind of make sure everything's in place. And I'll show you with video. After I've cut the blue layer and I've cut the yellow layer, then what I need to do is cut green layer here. And this is the layer that is going to weld all of the pieces together. Once I have gotten the black layer done and the yellow layer done, I'm going to line them up, make my acrylic sandwich, if you will, with a layer of plexiglass on the bottom, then the layer of yellow, then the layer of black. I'm going to put my little pieces in the space that will be made in between here where all of this will be cut out. I will put my little guys in there so that they're ready. Then I will take and put another layer of plexiglass on top of it. I will make sure those are secured together, usually with a little bit of tape on the sides. So all of these are going to be pressed down so that then this green layer will be this last layer that will cut through all the pieces of acrylic and do the welding process. So that's how you kind of figure out the design. Sometimes you have to think about it and you might even create shapes that you don't necessarily need for the welding process. Like originally, you might have noticed when I imported things, I had a big red circle and that was for the plexiglass material. And that would have been if I was just using like some regular adhesive on these pieces and I could just stick the plexiglass to like the other material. But I don't need to do that. I'm going to use this welding technique, which means I just need flat square plexiglass pieces. So that's how you set up a file. And I do have a live tutorial video on my channel that I will put a link up here somewhere that will also kind of go through it when I'm making another shaker, and that hopefully will help you guys a little bit as well. So, but that is how you set up the file in Lightburn. But in the meantime, we're going to work on the little baubles that are going to go inside the Halloween snow globe. I've already got these cut out, and I'm going to show you how I sublimate them. It's a really easy process. So I'm over here on my workstation, and I have little pieces of white acrylic that I have cut out and I've already peeled off the little backings for. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to set them on these little guys here, and I'm going to sublimate. This is sublimation paper that I printed out using my Epson 8550. That's my machine. I absolutely love it, highly recommend it, and it's filled with Hippo ink. But typically what I do is I just kind of line the shapes up, get to play the matching game, figure out where all these little guys go. And I'm going to use a little bit of heat-proof tape to secure them. So now that I've got all these secured and ready to go, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in my heat press, obviously face down in between two sheets, and I'm going to press this for 90 seconds at 390. And then when I'm done, I'm going to pop this out and put it between two ceramic plates and put a heavy weight on top of it just to help flatten them. If I'm working with larger pieces of acrylic, I will do a flattening cycle in my heat press, and I go into that in a video that I've done on my channel before. But for these little guys, I don't really think it's going to be an issue. I got my little pieces here. You can see from the opposite side, they sublimated on. So this is just the part where I kind of peel off and I clean them up. These did sublimate pretty well. I just need to get some of the paper residue off. And typically I do that by just soaking them in some warm water for a couple of minutes and then giving them a light scrub, and they'll scrub right off. As you can see, these turned out super cute. They're nice, they're vibrant, they're these tiny little baubles, and they will go great inside our haunted snow globe. So now I have all my little pieces sublimated, cut, ready to go. And I've gone ahead and done the initial inside cutting of both the yellow piece and the black piece. And these turned out pretty nice. This is matte acrylic. So now we're to the point where we need to assemble everything. Now, because we cut the designs and tied that square and lined everything up, the design fits perfectly. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to kind of create my little sandwich. Now, we need to make sure we've got all of the adhesive backing off on the sides that are going to be inside or in the welding. So these two I've gone ahead and peeled. So this side has no adhesive. This side still has some. And I'm going to leave this side covered just as a layer of protection on the board. So I'm going to make sure that's down. And I'm going to set my two pieces on top. And then I'm going to put my little guys in here. And then last but not least, I'm going to repeat again. Again, clear plexiglass side with it removed. I'm going to set that directly on top as well. So now that I've got all of the pieces lined up exactly as they should be, now comes the part where I'm securing this so that they all kind of stay in place while they're being cut. All right, so they're still moving around in there. Everything's nice, neatly lined up. We are ready to put this in the laser machine and have it do the final cut all along here, add my little top, and this is going to fuse the pieces together. Pretty cool, huh? Little pieces get kind of shooken up around. Yeah. So, but that's how you can make a cute little snow globe style ornament. Now, having done this design from scratch, showing you the whole process, my thought process here is I probably would want maybe a little more of a circle on the side just to make sure that there is enough to weld to, because I do worry that this, with it being as many layers, you sometimes could get breaks over time. But I also feel like it's just too thin of a border. I feel like it would look a little better if it was a bit thicker. I also think this design would probably work better if the material in between was 1.5 versus 3 millimeters, because then I wouldn't get this issue with them occasionally sticking when I'm shaking them. But beyond that, I think this is a really cool design. It's something that, makes for a very personalized item because you can put whatever you want in there, and the possibilities really are endless. This works for pretty much any acrylic. I mean, this is 4 layers of material. 2 and 3, I think, work a little bit better than 4. I worry that this might end up having like a pop off in the future, but it's a really cute way to do designs. I hope this video was helpful for you guys. I hope you have a better understanding of how the acrylic welding technique works and things that you can do with it. If you like this video, please be sure to hit the thumbs up button. And if you want to see more content like this, click the subscribe button. If you have any questions or any comments, please feel free to leave me a message below. In the meantime, I hope you guys have a good day. Bye.